Welcome, everyone. I'm very, very happy to have you here listening to my presentation today. I hope that it is very informative and helpful to you and anyone else that you might share up any of this information with. I've asked our admin help to be able to email you some of the material, the parts that where you can fill out, so that you can have these sheets that you fill out for yourself to help you to be able to identify situations that trigger you into fight, flight, or freeze, and then forms that would help you to identify the techniques you're going to use to get out of those. So I hope that works well. Okay, so the topic is the beginner's guide to healing trauma through the nervous system. And we'll move on to the first slide after that. Okay, so let's look at our objectives today. To understand how our nervous system responds to danger, threat, and how our nervous system responds to reconnection. And we can call those states our nervous system mobilizing, our nervous system disconnecting, and our nervous system re-engaging to be able to allow us to connect with ourselves and others. Another objective is to be able to understand how trauma impacts on those functions, how trauma impacts on danger, threat, and reconnection, and how, as a result of unresolved trauma, we may be stuck in the parts of our nervous system that keep us feeling that we are in danger, or parts of us that respond to threat. So that's not good. We don't want to stay stuck in those parts of our nervous system. And thirdly, what we can do to reestablish safety and our ability to connect with ourselves and others, because that is how human beings are designed, to help us to be healthy and to flourish and to enjoy life. Next slide. Okay, so we talked about the beginner's guide to healing trauma, and we've had a couple of other presentations by Sister Julie and Dr. Moore on trauma. So briefly, I'd like to be able to say, describe a traumatic event as any event or any situation that overwhelms our ability to cope. So this has nothing to do with whether we're good people or bad people, whether we're strong or weak, whether we are, whether we can cope or not. This is just how our system is built, our physiology, neurology, that when we become overwhelmed by a situation, an internal or external one, that overwhelm is significant, a significant aspect of trauma, a trauma reaction. The main difference between a stressful event and a traumatic event is that a traumatic event is always one that leaves us feeling powerless. So during the experience and after the experience, we feel powerless. Stressful experiences might feel dangerous, but they may not necessarily incur in us or incite in us a feeling of powerlessness. So two people may experience the same situation. One will experience it as a very stressful situation. The other person may experience it as a traumatic event. And if that event is not processed, that traumatic event is not what we call processed and integrated or digested, that is broken down so that we get the good parts and we get rid of the bad parts, then we are vulnerable to being triggered into those same traumatic nervous system responses ongoing in our lives. So something that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we can be triggered into our nervous system reacting the same way it did at that time, back then. So we can be triggered into what we call our fight-flight responses or our freeze responses. Next slide. So I actually hope this picture slide does not trigger any one of us here, because we've all been in situations where we've been scared by storms. So it might have been traumatic for us by lightning, because in this part of the world we are vulnerable to hurricanes. So what we call a trigger are aspects of our environment. They can be internal, like our heart beating faster, or a certain amount of sugar in our system, or a certain amount of stress hormones in our system. They might be thoughts we have, ideas, feelings. So they can be internal, and they can also be external, like seeing a lightning flash or lots of thunder. These are called stimuli, and they can be triggered and activate the same traumatic responses in our body: fight, flight, or freeze. And I'll give some examples there. Next slide. Continuing, if we experience repeated events where we feel powerless, so they can be very small, there can be smaller events in our lives. We can be living in situations where things are happening around us and we don't have the power to change them. So those small incidents have the same effect as a big T trauma on our nervous system. And if these are repeated incidents in our lives, they might be of the same kind, or they might be different ones, then our nervous system learns to react in those fight, flight, or freeze responses, where the freeze is also disconnect, where we feel alone and separated from others. So we can again be stuck in these responses later in our lives, even when there is no real danger or threat. And this is probably one of the most heartbreaking aspects of a traumatic event in our lives, or us being traumatized by situations in our lives, is that we replay the traumatic situations at great cost to our mental health and our physical health. We replay them many years after, and repeatedly many years after there is actually no more trauma. And that is our psychology, and that is our physiology of the human being. But we also have the capacity to heal from these events. Next slide. So we've been talking about our nervous system. The title talks about trauma. The title talks about how it impacts on our nervous system. So briefly, we have a bunch of nerves in our body that come either from the back of our head and spreads out through the body, or the ones that go through our spinal column. And all those sets of nerves, which are very crucial to our life and our health, that whole system is called our autonomic nervous system. And then there are different parts, two main parts, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And we're going to focus on both briefly. But traditionally, medicine has focused primarily on the effects of the sympathetic nervous system. Our fight-flight response, the part of our nervous system that can get us activated to where our heart rate will go up, our pulse rate will go up, leading to high blood pressure, heart attacks, and so on. But because of something called the polyvagal theory, we're not going to go into that as a term, but we are talking about it here. The polyvagal theory has shone the light on the role of the parasympathetic nervous system in our responses to stress and trauma. And when we look at this slide, you'll see that there are actually two aspects of one nerve. They're literally two branches of one nerve that is very, very important in its impact on stress and trauma on our bodies. And that part of our nervous system is responsible, the dorsal part is responsible for what we call our freeze response, our shutdown or collapse response. It's also responsible for when that part of the nerve, that dorsal nerve, is working well. It also allows us to rest and digest and also repair. So all the detoxification of our organs, our repair of our organs is because of this wonderful nerve that is part of the sympathetic called the dorsal. Another branch of the parasympathetic is the ventral vagus nerve, which allows us to enjoy being with ourselves and each other, feel peace and contentment, be curious, be fun-loving, love to learn, enjoy nature. This is the part of the nervous system that, in order to have a good life, needs to be activated many times during our day. Next slide. So here we have the author of the polyvagal theory, Dr. Stephen Porges, who Sister Julie and the Franciscan Institute made sure we had a wonderful presentation from him years ago. And it has this view of how he explains how our nervous system responds has been very, very crucial in our increasing and in bettering our work in helping people to recover from trauma. So this is it. We look at the responses to trauma. So our system, on the slide, you'll see that our nervous system, you'll see then these three arrows leading. Our nervous system is really set up as our personal surveillance system. It's constantly checking the internal, inside our body, and our external environment, what is around us, what we can see and smell and hear, to see if a situation or person is safe. And this is going on all the time for us. This is going on all the time. So we have a system that is constantly surveilling if we're safe, if we're in danger, or if we're under threat, right? So it's scanning all the time for safety, danger, and life threat. When it is able to notice that we're safe, as I had said earlier on, for the ventral vagal part, that is when we are functioning really well, right? Our body is working well, it is repairing, it is resting, it is digesting. It is able to allow us to feel connected to ourselves, to others, to nature, to our spirituality. And this is done a lot through the way that we read, or that our neuroception, our ability, unconscious reading of others' eye contact with us that will register either that we're safe or we're not safe. Their facial expressions. So if we see a soft look, a smile on someone's face, that clues us in that we might be safe. We will also use many other cues unknown to us, meaning it's happening unconsciously. And the sound or the tone, prosody, we call it, of someone's voice. So if we hear a soft tone, like sometimes how mothers talk to their babies, it's wired into our middle ear through our vagus nerve that we automatically feel safer or safe. If we hear what we call low frequency sounds, that's a sign of danger. If we hear high frequency sounds, that's wired in for us to think there's distress around us. Somebody is in distress. And all of this is happening minute by minute in our systems without conscious awareness. Our nervous system, if it picks up danger, becomes very active to deal with that danger. So to be able to deal with that danger, we become very alert. We look around, we are constantly picking up what is going on, what do we need to do? And that mobilization of our system through the sympathetic nervous system will result in, among other things, increased heart rate, rage, panic, very high anxiety, or we might actually flee, or we might run away physically from the situation, or leave the situation, or we may internally withdraw. So we're making a distinction here between a danger and a threat, a live threat. So if we pick up something that has a tag for us, that this is a life or death situation, then we might go into the dorsal vagus part of our nervous system. So we will be shutting down, our energy will get lower. We might even immobilize or freeze. This is where you might have decreased heart rate, you may have disassociation, you may even faint or collapse. Next slide. All right, so we could think of it as a ladder, right? We can think of the ladder like this, and we can think of the bottom part of the ladder as part of the sympathetic that causes us to collapse. So it's not a choice we're making. You know, sometimes when people have been in dangerous situations, they might say, well, I stayed in it, so I am to blame. But it is not actually us choosing to stay in it, is that our nervous system has decided that this is a life threat, or that we've been in a dangerous situation too long and we cannot do anything more. So our dorsal vagal shuts us down. This happens whether we want it to happen or not. When we're there, the feelings or the attitude might be, this is just too much, I can't get out of it. Nobody's coming for me, I'm alone, nobody cares about me. The world doesn't feel like a very good, warm, welcoming place. It feels empty, dead, and dark, right? When we're further up the ladder, so literally our nervous system doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like a ladder. This is just a metaphor. When we are activated by danger, we get a lot of energy. There's a lot of adrenaline. As we said, there's hyper-arousal. We might think or feel it is too much. This is too much, I can't cope with it. I'm having a hard time, I can't keep up. We might be anxious, we might be very irritable. The world will feel dangerous, it will feel unfriendly, it will feel chaotic. When we are able to engage our social connection or engagement part of our nervous system, which is another part of the sympathetic, we feel all is well. So this is not 100% perfect place, right? There are different gradations all the way through of how much we feel these, or we are in this aspects of our nervous system. We might feel in that top part, or the social engaged, the safe part, at peace, at ease. You feel more able to manage what was coming your way. You feel empowered. You feel hopeful, optimistic, and you feel more connected to the world and the people. We could view this as another way to view it is that when we're at the bottom of the ladder, that's like in a home, you're not there in that home, and the basic utilities, it's a basic utilities manager. It keeps everything running, right? That's not when you're numb or collapsed. That's when your bottom part of your nervous system, we're calling it the dorsal, when that is running well, in other words, we're not in numb or collapse or shut down, your basic utility manager is working. You know, you will have your electricity available for use, your water, but there's no one at home. If we look at the sympathetic, not when we're necessarily activated, but its job is like our home security system. It's armed to react to emergencies. It will trigger an immediate response, and then it will go on standby. That's when it's working well. And the top part, the ventral vagal, allows us to get out of that constant messaging of messages coming through from the alarm system. And it allows us to enjoy being in our home. When we get home after a long day, we can throw off our shoes, we can relax, and we can enjoy our home. So somebody then is at home. We're there, we're present. So that's just an analogy of how it is supposed to work. All right, so the next, sorry, this, yes, go back one, please. Right. All right, so we'll stay with this for a few minutes longer because I wanted to explain that when you're where you're in the dorsal part of our nervous system, that's when our body experiences threat, or when we've had too many experiences of fight or flight, and our system cannot keep going with that overactivation, that energy, that adrenaline will collapse and we'll have very low energy. That part of our nervous system is when we might, you know, we feel low energy, we feel depressed, we feel pessimistic, we're not feeling hopeful about life. We might even be disassociated. We will have perhaps memory problems there. We may have stomach problems. We'll have low blood pressure. Even type 2 diabetes has been linked to this part of our nervous system being in shutdown too frequently in our lives and us not being able to get out of it. Again, not our fault. We may even have weight gain as a result of this this part of our nervous system taking us there too many times and even being stuck there. We may experience chronic fatigue, digestive issues, bowel issues. If we have to be mobilized too many times because of danger or something that comes to mean danger for us, we will experience anxiety, panic attacks, anger, difficulty in focusing. We won't be able to follow through things because we're distracted all the time, having to be on alert. We'll also have relationship difficulties. Regarding our health, if we are in that part of our nervous system too many times, stuck in it, we may experience high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep difficulties, weight gain, also memory impairment, headaches, chronic pains in our neck, back, and shoulder, stomach problems, and so on. So there are a lot of health issues that are tied to our nervous system. And at the tops of the scale, which we said is where we want to be as much of the time as possible. That's where we'll have a good, healthy heart. We'll have good regulation of our blood pressure, healthy immune system. We'll have good digestion, good quality sleep, and an overall sense of well-being. A bit like nirvana, right? Next slide. So I want to introduce to us, so you'll be getting hopefully some of these slides. You won't get the whole presentation, but you will get these slides, the next 6 slides, to help you to be able to fill them in for yourself and fill in the parts that will help you to identify your triggers and so on. Now I'm seeing some messages, so I won't stop now to answer the questions, but hopefully I'll be able to access them because we'll leave about at least half an hour for question and answer after my presentation. So write down your questions, and if they're in the chat, I think that we could access the chat to see your questions. So if we look at ourselves being in these different parts of our nervous system, then we would see we can simplify it. It's not so simple, it's not so simplistic, but we can see that, okay, if we're in the bottom part, that means something would have triggered us into feeling there's a life threat and we're immobilized or collapsed. Sometimes there is no life threat, but our system gets to read stimuli in our environment, internal and external, as a life threat. So it might be somebody's voice being raised, it might be the sound of a gunshot, it might be thunder, it might be walking into a classroom. So those inherently are not life threats, but we can respond like that. So if we're in this part, the next slide, don't go there yet, but the next slide will start giving us an opportunity to look at how we can change that. Or we are mobilized or in fight or flight. There is a gradation in all the parts of our nervous system. So we get energy in our sympathetic. We get energy to work, to do things. And if we don't get over-mobilized, if we don't get triggered into fight or flight, then we can be in that good part of the lower sympathetic where we can do projects, we can get our work done, and it is very healthy. We can be producing the right ratio of cortisol to DHEA that would actually help build networks in our brain, help us with memory, and generally good for us. So the sympathetic is not all bad, it's very good. Some parts are really excellent. And then the ventral part of the vagus nerve in the parasympathetic is what allows those unique human behaviors of being able to parent well, to hold babies, to show them smiles and sweet vocalizations that help them to feel safe, that allows us to bond with our family and our partners, that allows us to engage with other human beings, have fun, and be curious. So, enjoy life, be passionate in a good way about life. Next slide. Okay. So if you notice on the right-hand side, this slide is filled in, right? So when we are in that good part, we're in the flow, right? We're feeling all those good feelings I talked about. And our belief, our attitude is, I'm okay and the world is benign. The world is good. It's not a dangerous place or a despairing place. When we are when we are triggered into fight or flight, it's chaos for us internally. And as I said, we feel out of control. We might feel confused. We might feel overwhelmed. We might feel angry. We might pick fights. We might, unaware, We're not aware we're doing it, but you might see over time that you have that predictable pattern where you might be picking fights because you're now in fight flight, you're activated or triggered, or you might be ready to run. So some of you, your friend or your partner might say, you want to leave every time things get difficult. You know, you want to get in the car and drive away. You want to go into another room and be by yourself. And that is not something for people to be blamed, but we may notice it and we can change it. So there we feel that the world is just too much, crazy, overwhelming. It's unfriendly. And there's that shut down part of the nervous system, the bottom part of the ladder where it feels all doom and gloom. And that's where some people will feel so bad about living, they may want to, they entertain thoughts of suicide. And that is not real, meaning that they are thinking those thoughts, but it's because of the part of the nervous system they got triggered into, right? Next slide. So when you get this, what I would like you to do is fill in what are the things, the external and internal stimuli that trigger you into fight flight. Anxiousness, panic attacks, feeling overwhelmed, feeling frantic. So it's characterized by quite a lot of energy in your system. You might want to pace, walk up and down. You'll be irritable. You might snap, or you might flee, right? You'll just get away from that situation. So that's your triggers that you'll be filling in. There'll also be triggers that what shuts you down. When you get triggered into just feeling that you need to isolate, feeling other people don't care about you, what happened to lead you to that? You know, if you feel somebody didn't remember your birthday and you feel, you know, this is the most terrible thing in the world. That happened to me the other day, and I did feel that it was the most terrible thing in the world. But I had a session about it, and I was able to recover and decide to tell my husband that, okay, I'm not going to separate from you because of this, because it felt so big and bad. Then the glimmers are those glimpses that we can get of to help us connect. So the next slide is filled in just with examples. Okay. And these are not, don't have to be your examples. These don't have to be true of you. This is just to give you somebody else's filled out sheet as a template so that you can see, as an example, sorry, so that you can see that for some people, a smile, a hug, meeting with a friend, walking on the beach, going for a swim, in the ocean, watching a movie or a show, listening to music, can all be taking us to that good part of our nervous system throughout the day. A photograph on a table of our loved ones, you know, when you're at work and you're feeling stressed and you look at that lovely grandchild sitting there, or your sibling, and it brings a smile to your face. Triggers into fight flight might be raised voices, might be criticism, might be social media stuff, arguments, financial pressures. It can be anything. The same triggers that might be some people fight or flight might be for others, ones that make them low in energy, depressed, collapsed. So it's very individual. So those triggers for some people that might make you feel like that would be just constant demands, the pressures of COVID, financial pressures, and of course, feeling powerless, right? So any of those that make you feel powerless, that's the part of the nervous system that you might get into. Chronic pain, fibromyalgia, illness, loss, all of those. Next slide. Next slide. All right. So I know that I'm running through these pretty quickly. And it's a lot of information, and it is, for some of us, a very different way to think about ourselves and our moods and our behaviors, and also about other people's moods and behaviors. So we might be calling other people lazy. We may be saying other people have an anger management problem. We might be saying somebody crazy. We might be saying somebody's out of control. We might say that they always sour, they're always looking so down, they're a downer. Now we have other ways to understand and not mislabel what is happening with other people. Because those words, those descriptions won't help that person, and they won't help you. So this is one that I would hope you would get and that you can fill out. So what are the things that would allow you on your own, one column on the left, or with others, the other column on the right, which is to do with others? What are things, strategies, techniques you can use to get out of the two bottom parts of your nervous system, which is the shutdown part, the collapse or immobilize, or the fight flight? So you may not experience what is happening to you in that way. You may, when you are feeling down, low energy, you may not feel immobilized. You may not feel collapsed. So you would have to find generally that bottom part, or the dorsal, usually is characterized by lower energy and a more gloomy perspective on life, and feeling isolated and disconnected. Those are the major characteristics. If you may not feel you're in fight flight when you're picking a quarrel, when you're being confrontational, when you're feeling very anxious. But that's the way that the people who came up with these terms described it, right? And there would be gradations of how intense we feel that. If you're not an athlete and your pulse rate goes above 99, 100, then you're in fight flight. So some people can take their pulse. If you have a watch that can take your heart rate, or there are little things called pulse oximeters, where you put your finger in and it gives you your pulse. If you're not an athlete and you go over 99, 100, that means you're definitely in fight or flight. That's what the research says. Your blood is, your system is pumping out adrenaline, cortisol, and we are not good. The research also shows we are not good at telling the gradations. So 1 minute, you might be in the 80s pulse rate, which means you're getting things done, you're activated, but it's good. And then in another second, you could be over 100 and you won't be able to tell the difference. You won't be able to know that, okay, I've now gone to 90 or I've now gone to 95 easily. You'll often be able to tell when you're overactivated. So some of us need to use something to help us to notice how activated we're getting. And if you're an athlete, then you're overactivated when your pulse rate is 85 and over, right? So there's a difference. So what moves you out of here if you're in fight flight, what on your own if you're on your own, and what you can do with others. And how do we stay in that upper part of our, we cannot stay 24/7. That's not the goal. The goal is not to stay in that. It doesn't seem to be possible. We need the surveillance system. We need to be able to respond to danger and life threat. But how do we make sure we are in these systems enough? How do we make sure that we don't get stuck in that overmobilized part of our nervous system, feeling overactivated, anxious, panicked, overwhelmed? How do we make sure we're not stuck in the low part of that nervous system, meaning low, not meaning it's worse, but just the description of on the ladder, it's at the bottom. How do we get out of that lower energy, that low motivation, that looking at the world through those, gray lenses, seeing it dark and gloomy. So we want to be up in this part several times of the day. So next slide. Right, so this is just an example of what other people have written and things that get them out on their own, out of shutdown, may work for some people, may not work for you. So you have to develop your own that works for you. But some people say when they're shut down that much, sleep helps them. They sleep a good chunk of time. They wake up, they feel better. So somehow sleep will get them to come out of that shutdown, right? Listening to music. So some of the same things that work for getting out of the shutdown state are the same things that work. You just have to figure it out. They don't have to be completely. It's just the effect on your system. Prayer for some people on their own, the connection with nature, going for a walk, looking at your garden, hearing the birds. In the Caribbean, we're lucky because we have many aspects of nature that we can access. We don't have a winter season and so on. So we have so many aspects of nature that we can connect with. And what can you do with others? You can get a hug, you can call someone, you can email someone, you can go for a walk, you can sit among people so you don't feel so isolated. The other section for this fight or flight, and this again is what some people do. I wouldn't necessarily do these things myself. Use that energy to do things. Clean, declutter, go for a walk, swim, go to the gym, run. But you can also sing along to loud music. You can, without scaring anyone else or doing harm to yourself, you can scream, you can get it out, you can vent. But, to be thoughtful about how you're doing that. And there is a lot of energy, as I said, in our systems. And sometimes when the energy is not dispelled, it stays in our body. And the body work is what allows us to move that energy out. And when the body has released that energy from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it doesn't have to be now, then our system can get back to a better homeostasis or better equilibrium. What helps us to move with a friend? Have a session with a friend. We do that. We call our friend, we say what upset us, what happened. We can go for a walk again with someone. We can join other people for exercise or yoga. Yeah, and you can ask someone to listen to you, because that's a main job of therapists, is to listen to our clients and hear what is upsetting them or what has upset them. And how do we stay in that social connection, social engagement part of our nervous system? Again, it can be similar things. Depends on what it works for you, right? Listening to music, gardening, cooking, exercising, being with different people. With others, again, things you can do with others. Now, I am going to have a slide coming up where I make particular suggestions, but I'm just giving you how this was filled out by the author. Next slide. So we just talked about other ways that people can get out of fight flight, right? So if you're mobilized, you're agitated, you're frantic, right? You're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're irritable. What are some things, in addition, I'm going to add that you can do? Can you have the other slide? Okay. So I would say we have to be very aware, especially of what is happening in our body. So to be able to know I am overactivated, I'm in fight flight. My nervous system is in fight flight. Something happened that my body, my brain decided this is dangerous to me. It may not actually be, but it's a trigger. So as an adult, it might be somebody raising their voice, but they're not harming us. They just maybe raise their voice. It may be they're in fight flight. Or it might be somebody saying something critical. It might be somebody invalidating us in some way, something that we interpret or is a put down. These might be triggers for some of us into fight flight. This is based on experiences we had when we were younger, when our nervous system responded to those experiences. They were tagged as dangerous, somebody raising their voice at us, looking at us with a very serious, threatening look, because our internal wiring is that as mammals, we respond to those inherently as danger or as a life threat. It doesn't matter if it is coming from a parent or a loved one. If in the moment for a young child, your face changes to an aggressive look, a threatening look, the child's nervous system will go into that response. It's not something that they're choosing. So first, we have to be able to notice the symptoms, the signs that say my nervous system is activated. It's triggered into fight flight. And if it is not a situation where you actually need to flee or fight, then you want to be able to acknowledge, to label, to say, this is what's happening. My heart is beating faster. My stomach is clenching. My hands are shaking or trembling. It feels as if there's a big buildup of energy in my hands. My shoulders and neck feel tight. Those might be some of your cues. So first, you have to be aware, and then you have to label it or acknowledge it. Next slide. Okay. And you will be able to say, okay, oh, my nervous system is reacting in fight flight. Okay, that gives you a chance to separate out that reaction of your nervous system from you feeling this is really happening. I really am in danger. I really have to fight or flee. And it, as I said, many times in our adult life, it's not a new or real danger or threat. So once it's triggered, if it's real, if you need to fight, now fight may be argue, then that may be what you need to do, right? Because you need the energy of the fight flight to mobilize. If you need to run away, you don't want to be calming yourself down and staying in the place. You need to fight. So we need those responses if that is actually going on. But however, if it is your sibling telling you something negative about yourself, or a parent, or a boss, then there's no actual threat, danger to your life. Then you want to calm yourself down. You want to get out of that overactivated part of your nervous system. Because when you're in fight or flight, other than fleeing or fighting, you cannot figure out what else to do, right? It disconnects you from the thinking part of the brain. Just being in fight or flight, the survival response disconnects you so that you can respond faster. So you want to now slow and get your nervous system to go into a slower rhythm, get you out of that sympathetic fight or flight. One of the ways that many people find, so a lot of people, not everyone finds it useful, so it may not be useful for you, is where we do diaphragmatic breathing, which is inhale to 3 and exhale to 7. The description is coming up after this, so we'll practice it then. Sometimes that isn't what works for you, so just sighing out, a long exhalation breath may work. And because there's a lot of buildup of energy in your system, some movement may help to dissipate it, walking, running, or something like yoga, which is some activity, but also very calming. So this is not an all-inclusive list for the purposes of this talk, but in therapy, you know, we can establish many other techniques, not many, but some other techniques that help with calming. Next slide. Okay, so here is one form of diaphragmatic breathing, one way to do it. In terms of the count, the ratio, there are many other ratios people use. There are many that if you Google it, that are taught. You know, that you count, you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4. You know, there are many other versions. I'm using this version because this is what research has been done in the field of trauma. And so if you have to try one, this is one to try. If you are using other methods of breathing, other ratios, and it's working to calm you, stick with what works. So I would like us to try this now. Okay. The diaphragmatic or the belly breathing means that you're actually pushing your lower belly out as you inhale to a count of 3. So it's literally like 3 seconds. So you can get enough air into your lungs, oxygenate. By pushing your lower belly out, your lungs will take in a lot more air. And then you're going to bring your abdomen in relaxedly, slowly, only allowing a little bit of air out. You can do it through your nose or your lips as you exhale to 7. So this takes some practice. So I'd like us to try it now. And let's see if this will work, because I can't actually see any of you. So I'm just sort of talking to the computer. All right, so let's try to start together. Gently put your palm just beneath your belly button. And I want you to push out so you feel that palm moving out, and then bring it back in, that belly, use the muscles to bring it back in so that you feel your belly coming in. And those are the muscles you'll be using, really good muscles to use for this kind of breathing and generally for breathing, because you want to push out, not excessively, and bring in. That pumping action is very good, not just to get air in and get all the used up air and the carbon dioxide out, but it also works to exercise the organs in your body, which is very important, okay? So as you put your palm on your belly, just let's get ready. Inhale, push out, 2, 3. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, push out, 2, 3. Exhale, bring in the belly, 4, 5, 6, 7. Push out, 2, 3. Bring in, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are lots of descriptions on how to do the belly breathing, but this is how I teach it. And you want to have your shoulders relaxed, and you want to be as relaxed as possible. You want to develop a rhythm. And some people may fall asleep right away because they're not accustomed to being relaxed. They are actually overactivated and tense too much of the time. So when your body gets a chance to start feeling it's relaxing, you might just go into sleep because maybe you haven't been getting good quality sleep. some people may find that there still is a lot of chatter in their brain, but you just keep doing the breathing and practice this every day. I recommend 3 times a day for a minimum of 5 minutes. You can't overdo this. If you find you're getting giddy, then you're either taking in air too fast, too much, or you're letting out air too fast and too much. Let's see if it works for you, practicing 3 times a day. If you do this pretty regularly, relaxing, you'll be rebuilding the biofeedback network in your body. That, oh, when I'm tense, this is what relaxes me. So after 6 to 8 weeks of this practice, your body will have established that it will start to do it on its own. You'll find yourself just taking a bigger, deeper breath at times. And this is very healthy. It increases what we call your heart rate variability, which strengthens your heart and protects you from heart attacks. So this is a win-win situation to be doing the inhalation short, just 3, because you only want to stay a shorter time in your sympathetic. And as you exhale, your parasympathetic is activated, which you need when you're overmobilized, when you need to relax. Next slide. Okay. So if you feel that you're in that bottom part of your nervous system, what can you do? This is a lot more challenging. And part of the reason that it's challenging is that the nerves that are part of that vagus nerve, the dorsal, is unmyelinated. That means that messages, electrical messages, do not travel fast without the myelination. So those parts like supply the stomach and the colon, it takes a while to change those, but you can do a lot to practice and to put that intention on changing the shutdown part when you don't need it. So if you're an animal and a predator has caught you, the collapse response is the last opportunity for you to survive, because the predator can be disarmed when you collapse or when an animal collapses. They'll walk away, the animal will get up and take off. I'm sure you've seen a lot of YouTube videos like that, and that actually happens. So we still have that part of our nervous system intact, and we can go into shutdown or freeze when we feel powerless or when we cannot get out, when fight flight is not getting us out of the danger. So things that happen repeatedly in our lives that we cannot get away from because we're children, we don't have the power, over time will become more shut down, will become more passive, more powerless in the face of that kind of stimuli for us. Next slide. Okay, how we get out of freeze. Again, you have to be aware what's happening. You have to be able to be aware and know that you're triggered. So you'll be noticing, how am I feeling? What is my body doing? Feelings and somatic sensations. Sometimes the somatic sensations are the biggest clues. Sometimes your feelings are your biggest clues. Very different person to person. So if your energy is low, if you're lethargic, if you're feeling depressed and or pessimistic, isolated, disconnected, you are in that part of your nervous parasympathetic vagus nerve, that's the dorsal part. And once that's on, you will be experiencing some version of these. You cannot outthink your way out of this. You actually have to do things that speak to that part of the nervous system. And telling yourself to get up and get on with things is not always the way that our nervous system can respond to what we want it to do. We have to use the language that the nervous system understands in order to create change. So once you've acknowledged that you're in shutdown or freeze, next slide. Okay. You can say to yourself, okay, oh, wow, my nervous system is responding to a threat. Whatever it was, felt like my life was in danger. Was or is my life in danger? Is having a lot of work placed in front of me a life threat? Am I going to die from that? So this is not to make you feel bad. This is just factual. But somehow having a lot of work to do placed in front of you can, for you, take you down into that shutdown part of your nervous system. You're overwhelmed and you're shutting down. So once you can acknowledge that, you notice what your body is feeling, what your emotions are like, you can say, for example, may not work for you, but I say, for example, to myself, okay, there's actually nothing happening now to make me feel like this, and it's not useful for me to stay here. So what can I do? I've got to do something. I might make some very small movements, move my feet a little bit on the bed, move my hands around very gently. I might even, if I'm not too far down into it, I might be able to go for a walk. I might be able to go to the gym. So again, there's a gradation. If you're in the top part, you'll still be able to engage, do some of these. You're not into total collapse. You're not into disassociation. However, if things happen in your life that repeated traumas and that has now stuck you there, not your fault, not because you're not a good person or you're not strong, then you will need some help. You won't easily be able to do it on your own. You may need to tell someone else, someone that you trust, someone that's a good ally for you, non-judgmental. You might need to say, when I'm like this, can you remind me too? Can you encourage me to move my body a little bit? Can you encourage me to hum? Okay, so I don't sing very well, and I don't want to make your ears ache today, so I'm not going to demonstrate humming, but you know what humming is like. Hum. Sound certain resonant sounds, certain frequencies, speaks to that part of our nervous system that is shutting us down and is no longer doing its housekeeping duties. It's no longer working as our basic utilities manager with the electricity on and the water flowing. It's gone into, I'm in danger, so I'm going to just shut you down. So it's stopped its rest, repair, digest functions, keeping things going in the background. Okay? Another sound that helps is one that we learned from Peter Levine, who does a lot of work with the body movement, the body releasing the pent-up energy that was stored from us needing to have moved when we were encountering originally those traumatic experiences, is what is called the VOO sound. And what you would be doing, so I'm going to attempt to demonstrate it to you here, and I'm not going to hear you do it, but let's try to do it. Let's try to do it. Karen, are you acknowledging what people said? Thank you very much. I don't seem to be able to talk and type at the same time. Thanks. So the VOO sound, you want to be able to take a good breath of air in, make the VOO sound as long as you can, and try to feel as if it's coming from your lower abdomen. So this is my version of the VOO sound. VOO. I'll take 2 breaths. Another inhalation. So some of you who would like to try it with me now, let's do it together. Take a deep breath. A breath, exhalation, a breath, So it works for some people really well. It doesn't work for everyone. So you would have to experiment and see if that will bring some energy back into your system. And what you don't want to happen, and what happens to us, not because we want it, but because how our nervous system has learned, it stayed stuck and then it learned this pattern that we go from shutdown or collapse to overactivation. Then when we're exhausted from that, we go into collapse again. And many of us have that cycle, right? So we will overwork, we will get to the point where we're so exhausted and then we collapse, maybe on the weekend, and then you get activated again. So you want to function not from fight or flight to get things done in your life, unless you're in danger. When you're in danger, you need that big surge of energy to be able to fight or to flee. All right, so I hope you liked doing those, the breathing and the VOO sound. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so as I said, you want to be able to move up the ladder. So if you're in shutdown, you want to have to get some energy, but you don't want the fight flight energy. That's too hard on your system if you're not in danger. So you want to move, you want to hum, you want to do VOO, you want to move your limbs a little bit, you want to hear music that makes you feel a little better, that gives you a little energy. And then as you get the energy, you can then move up. You can call a friend, you can go for a walk, you can do things on your own that you've identified, or you can do things with others. And connection with yourself is an important part of also our social engagement system, not just with others. Next slide. Okay, so these are the things we said that you could do on your own, and you will have your own set that you will write down, all right? So that engagement, that part of our nervous system that is uniquely mammalian, uniquely human also, allows us to be able to form connections with groups of people, societies that can come together, where we work for the good of all, right? So when we can be in that part enough of us, we are compassionate, we are caring, So, you know, that is inherently part of that part of the nervous system. We can make, develop relationships with others. We can develop lifelong relationships. That is the part of the nervous system that is necessary for all of that. Next slide. Okay, so I had wanted a little music here because when I was finishing this, it was 1:30 in the morning. And I was thinking, okay, what is it that I really want to end this part with? The song, What the World Needs Now is Love, came to my mind. So we tried to see if it could work, but we weren't sure about copyright issues. So it's not, we don't have it on. But if we then, so in concluding, right, looking at our nervous system responses to danger and to threat, looking at it through that lens, it'll help us to not blame ourselves or others for these inbuilt unconscious biological responses. They are really that. So if we were in a situation and we felt the story that we put, what happened was that we stayed in a bad situation when we were children or teenagers, then we don't need to blame ourselves or feel guilt or shame, because the fact that we can make up a story and said, well, I gave up, so I just decided to that, is not actually completely accurate, or I let it happen, is not accurate. It's your nervous system deciding to respond that way based on danger cues and based on threat cues. The other helpful thing I find about this lens is that it helps us to understand ourselves better, right? And to be more compassionate to ourselves, to not let the inner critic be so judgmental, and not let the parts of ourselves that are so angry with us for not doing this or that or being perfect. And in the Caribbean, we have been hurt a lot to feel that way, to feel that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not the real thing. It's a very characteristic legacy of colonization, particularly British colonization. So this lens helps us to be more compassionate, and it provides us with some self-help tools, and we just went through some. It also creates more opportunities for helping us to deal with and to treat as therapists and as friends and as loved ones anxiety, depression, and disassociation. So that is the end of my presentation today, and I would like to open it up to questions now. Can someone tell me how we're going to do that? Perhaps we can unmute others.
When they want to ask the question, they can just unmute themselves. But I would recommend that Dr. Moore just go start giving the questions from the chat first, if that's acceptable, right?
Right.
Yes, great. Yes. Thank you.
I'm going to thank you, Sister Julie, and thank you so much, Waveney. And of course, we're going to thank you properly at the end of this. So we have till about 7 o'clock for questions.
Chocolate? Are you giving me chocolates?
We'll get there. We'll get there. Cake? Sister Julie was talking about chocolate just before you came on, so all that could happen.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to take questions from the chat. If anybody wants to give a question, you can either put it in the chat, or you can, if you like, if you know how to do it, you can do a raised hand. I think we should be able to see it on the screen. Not sure. We may have to stop sharing the screen with the presentation so that we can see everybody on the chat, on the call. And so we'll be able to see if somebody raises a hand, hopefully. So the first question was, can someone fluctuate between all three?
Absolutely.
So all three states from day to
Yes.
day.
Absolutely. And that is how we are supposed to function, providing that there's actually real danger and threat, right? So if there's real danger, we're supposed to go into fight or flight. If there's real threat, we're supposed to go into collapse, shutdown, and then we're supposed to recover, like animals do that are in the wild, right? They go through those three. You know, a predator gets them, they shut down, they flee first, of course, they shut down, they collapse, the predator moves away, boom, they run off, and then a few hours later, minutes, they're back grazing, you know, hanging out with the group. But we don't recover so quickly because we don't get a chance to go through the different releases of energy in the way society has taught us to be, you know?
Okay.
So yes, you
Mhm.
can actually, in a day, cycle through all. Yeah.
Okay. I know this is not the next question, but it's a quick one to answer. Somebody's asking if it's possible, will be possible to access a recording of the presentation later. Yes, it will be. It will go on the Franciscan Institute YouTube channel, and a link will be sent out. And you'll be able to access it on there. Probably, if not by tomorrow, by the end of the weekend, say Monday. Yeah. Okay. So another question was, how do you help someone get beyond stroke out of dorsal vagal activation if they seem to be stuck there for an extended period of time?
Generally, if someone is stuck there, it's something that is, you know, they've experienced, you know, some trauma in the past. So, as I would have said, some of us have been so affected by our experiences. Jan, why are you saying that? Sorry, I just read something that Jan wrote me. So that really shut down, so that, you know, we have people that are so depressed that they actually stay in bed for days, weeks. And that's something that is very difficult for an untrained person to deal with. Normally, often what happens is we get just very frustrated and irritable, and we start to be abusive to the person, you know, hostile and criticizing them and saying they don't want to help themselves and whatever. So I would say first, maybe some if the person that you're trying to help trusts you, that you are a safe person for them, because to get out, you need safety. You need to perceive safety. If you're safety, you can use a very soft prosodic voice, and you can encourage them to make small movements. So even very small movements where you move a finger and you just, because to the person it will feel impossible. So they will protest a lot maybe, but if you say, please try. But generally at that point, somebody really needs professional help. All right, so you can try the things we talked about, which is small movements, music, and even to get somebody out of bed to take a shower is a victory, you know, because even for that 5 or 10 or 15 minutes they're up and about, they would have had to come out of the deepest part of that vagal, dorsal vagal shutdown. So they may not automatically feel better, but you've interrupted the nervous system being in that place. So just tiny gains are crucial. Tiny gains. The person is not going to see it because they're so pessimistic, they're so down, They're not going to see that tiny gain as something to be celebrated. So they need someone to help them to see it like that, right?
Okay. Other questions? You can unmute yourself or you could put up your hand. If anybody wants to ask other questions.
Hi. Hi, Waveney. Hi, sister. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Okay, so one of my questions is, I have a few. If someone, say for example, they got shouted at a lot when they were young, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes a trigger in their older years. Like in the older years when they're shouted at, it triggers them. Can anything be done for them to recover from that early imprint? That they don't get triggered in their adult years again?
Yeah. Someone with my training and background, I would use some kind of trauma processing technique if they were my client. And so I would ask them to identify memories, if they have any associated with those instances in their life. I will try to establish, you know, if I can work with the earliest using various techniques that Karen spent such a long time describing my capabilities, which was very embarrassing for her to go on and on like that. But the EMDR, observed experiential integration, progressive counting, flash, there are many very good trauma resolution techniques that could be used, but you have to be trained. You have to first be some kind of background in therapy, at least a postgrad level, and you would have had to have master's level, meaning up to the level to be able to practice those techniques, because you don't want to be doing it if you don't know what you're doing. People can be triggered into, you know, disassociation, and you don't want them leaving your office, you know, in a state, driving away from you in a car, or going home in a state that they're not, you know, relaxed and calm. So yes, that is one way. The methods through the polyvagal theory that I presented today would be to calm yourself. You know, if you're activated into fight flight, you can keep using your breathing techniques. You'll find that the more you practice, the more you catch it, and the more you practice, the less charge it has, so that over time, it won't be as activating. Okay, I cannot guarantee that by using the calming methods for fight flight, for a traumatic experience, I cannot guarantee that just that will completely process and integrate the experience, but it can take it down a lot. It can take the intensity down a lot. If it takes you down into shutdown, some of the same techniques we talked about, practice, 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 it will then not take you down as low, right? Okay, so is that Sophie's talking?
Yes.
Okay, hi, Sophie.
Hi.
You had another question, or Karen, how you manage this?
Okay, no, Sophie, you had said you had a few questions.
Yes.
I just allow me one little space. The link to the Franciscan Institute YouTube channel is in the chat for anybody who wants to take it from the chat and copy it. This recording will be on that channel probably over the course of the weekend. So the link is in the chat. All right, so Sophie, you said you had other questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and then there's one in the chat that I'll go to.
All right, so can somebody be like shut down and numb in a certain area of their life and stay there forever, and then just be functioning kind of normally in other areas of their life?
Yes. But I would say that if it's that kind of shutdown, it will affect everything. So many, many, many people live a sort of somewhat trance-like life because they've been shut down. They've gone into collapse. It's not literally looking like collapse. They can have a functional life, but they're not at their optimal functioning. So that person will not experience joy with that intensity that they can. They will not experience, they will experience a very narrow range of emotions, more shut down, flat. And generally it would be across the board in all areas of their life, you know?
Okay. Do you have other questions, Sophie?
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right.
So then
Well,
we
I
have
guess I guess I should ask Waveney. I mean, I guess that to heal from that, you would need some very consistent, intense intervention from somebody like you, trained in your kind of work, correct?
Yeah. Not everybody uses the techniques or the approach I use, but once it's going to get you to resolve the trauma, yes, you want to do that, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we have from Kiara Matthews, is it that anxiety is quote unquote easier to treat than depression?
It's a great question. If it's the kind of anxiety, if the depression is the kind where you're shut down a lot, and that there's this chronic depression because of the fact that it's harder to change, to heal from that the dorsal vagal, you know. So yes, but you know, if somebody is chronically anxious, it's also quite a challenge to be able to get out, because once you're stuck, the pathways keep you there, right? So that becomes your go-to. So your nervous system is responding to everything a lot in your day-to-day life. Having to get up, having to go to work, having to go to the grocery can make you anxious, right? So many different, it can after a while mean that everything or a lot of things can trigger you into that anxiety. And then once it becomes that, you know, that super highway that your nervous system learns to go to, once that is established, they're harder to change. But generally speaking, I would say, if you're really into collapse a lot, it's much harder to get out, to treat. Yeah.
From Catherine Herbert, at what point does an individual in the dorsal vagal stage require medication?
Since I am not an expert in medication, generally medical doctors and psychiatrists do that kind of medication for people who are deeply depressed, disassociated also. I would say that it pretty much depends on the psychiatrist or the general practitioner. It seems that that is quite common now to prescribe antidepressants if someone is depressed, whether it is, let us say, mild depression or you know, more severe depression. My approach is to see if there is if some of the techniques and the training I have can effectively change that. If I think that enough time has gone by and using the techniques I have, if those don't work, then I may recommend medication. I don't recommend medication, sorry. I may refer to a psychiatrist for an assessment for them, knowing that they are most likely to recommend medication. We know antidepressants work best with therapy. So the research is that antidepressants are about 35% effective, which is the same as placebo. But with therapy, it becomes the effectiveness, medication and therapy gives the person a 65% chance of dealing with their depression. So you definitely want to combine the meds with therapy.
And from Jillian Walters Morris, we have, what are the dangers of remaining in fight or flight permanently?
You're really going to be, you're not going to stay in fight or flight permanently. The nervous system cannot sustain that. So if you get stuck in fight or flight, you're going to go into shutdown, and you might cycle between fight, flight and shutdown as a way of life, as a way to be. But nervous system cannot maintain the chemicals and the hormones that are required to keep you in fight or flight. Fight or flight is meant to be a quick response to dangerous situation. Okay, so it's a quick response initially through the SAM system, where you get a big surge of adrenaline. If that isn't taking care of it, the HAP system comes into effect, which is the hypothalamus adrenal pituitary system, with your cortisol being pumped out. But it requires huge amounts of energy. And that's why if you stay in that state, you'll eventually get into shutdown, and you will, so you might either permanently then get into shutdown. So people who have been overactivated as children and teenagers and young adults can go into that. You might call that burnout. You might call that chronic fatigue, chronic depression, but you can't stay in fight or flight indefinitely. It's not possible physiologically.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have another question here. Forgive me if I don't pronounce the name correctly. It's from Mujawa Maria Anuarit. And it is, does not somebody's personality contribute to the difficulties of coming out of depression, for example?
I'm not too sure what, I'm terrified to massacre this person's name. I'm sorry. I'm trying to see your name again.
Well, I am Sister Catherine Maria. Waveney, you may know me, of course, but I am now in Rome, so that's me here.
Okay, hi. So
yeah, hi, greetings to you.
Yes. What do you mean by personality? You mean that some of us have personalities where
I mean, can I say now? I mean that some personalities easily could tend to be, you know, like a depressive. So with this type of personality, if the person falls then into depression, usually, I mean, they tend to go into those moods very often. So, but my question is, if then the falling into those depressive moods depends to the really the personality of the, I mean, to the personality of the individual. So actually then comes a question, if this falling into depression depends on person's personality, because that is what the person is, also is not possible that this person is in the therapy all the time. But then the person who lives with that individual who have that personality is really, it could be really challenging. You know, because if the person goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and in that case, so I was just wondering if that her personality also contributed to that falling into depression.
Okay. I'm not sure that I'm going to answer what you're asking, but I can tell you what I think. So what we would consider personalities, right? So we have what we call dysfunctional personalities that in psychiatry are diagnosed by, someone trained, psychiatrists or psychologists to be, narcissistic personality disorder is the flavor of the last 4 years, because a lot of people see, for example, Donald Trump as, personality disordered person. So personality, in my opinion, develops from our experiences, and whether they are processed or not, our cultural norms, what is culturally appropriate, our genetics, right? So it's several things put together. But I think that to say that it's somebody's personality that they may be stuck more in depression or less in depression or cycle through it, I wouldn't say that I hold that view. I would say that I would see it as, yes, there may be a genetic predisposition to depression. I think there's evidence of that, although there's disagreement in my field. So there are genetic predispositions to depression or anxiety or both, and both. And so it would make it a little harder if you have life experiences. But I think that if you don't have the experiences, or if you've processed and integrated or digested stressful and or traumatic experiences, you're not, because of the genetic predisposition, you're not going to just be depressed like that or just be anxious like that. And the world we live in is very stressful. So there are a lot of environmental stimuli that push us. We experience life as there's a lot of stressful aspects of life for us. So I would not view a client who is difficult, gets cycling depression or gets stuck in depression. I would not view it as someone whose personality is determining that. I would view it as, what else can I do? What other techniques, what other strategies can I come up with to help this person unlock from that part of their nervous system? And I don't think that people really want to be depressed, although for some people we say that there are secondary gains for being depressed or anxious or ill. It might get you a lot of attention and so on. But why do you want that attention in the first place? It means you have a hurt. You have had experiences where when you needed that attention, you didn't get it, or you had to find a way to get attention because you weren't getting what you needed. So you can still use the method of going back to those experiences and seeing if some of the trauma resolution methods will work with that. I hope that's kind of answering what you asked, sister.
Your mic, okay. You were going to say something, sister, your mic was off. Okay, your mic is still off, not hearing you.
I just typed thank you.
Okay, okay. We have a question from Christina Claire Georges. You spoke about elevated heart rate. At what point should you be concerned that this is a result of something medical versus something psychological?
Yeah, great question. I think that the way that medicine has evolved, it has disconnected it from our emotions, so that there's this unfortunate split between is this a medical issue? Is this a psychological issue? And it's actually not accurate. Trauma, high stressful situations in our life that are not resolved, or traumatic experiences that are not processed, there is a huge amount of evidence that people who have experienced trauma and stressful experiences have high blood pressure, have more heart attacks, medicate more with alcohol. There are more instances of diseases, immune-related, diabetes. So this is a bit of a false, not helpful differentiation. So if you go to a doctor and they're reading your blood pressure is high, then they might put you on statins, right? But did they take a history to look at what traumatic experiences you had in your life? You would, of course, need to look at your diet, nutrition, because those will influence, you know, if you're eating lots of salt, you know. You can also practice the deep breathing. So people that I see, I have a blood pressure cuff in my office. And when they tell me they have high blood pressure and they're on meds for it, I take so I never tell them to come off, because that's completely not okay. But I will take their blood pressure and then I'll teach them the deep breathing, and I'll ask them the 3 in and the 7 out, and I'll take their blood pressure again. And a lot of the time, the blood pressure comes down. So they can see the influence of the deep, the belly breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing. And sometimes as people's trauma resolves through trauma resolution work, their blood pressures does come down. But I cannot say, I think that as somebody responsible for your own health, you know, go to your doctor, practice. If they put you on statins, you know, you can choose to take it or not, and practice your calming techniques, not just your breathing, but, you know, how you're relating, how do you respond to life's challenges? What are the triggers in your life? You can apply the same information we have here that we covered today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Are there any other questions? It is about 9 minutes to 7. So we can probably take just 1 or at the most 2 brief questions more. So if you have anything to ask, now is the time, or put it in the chat. Okay. It seems as if we don't have any more at this point. So I will want to hand over to Sister Julie for the closing thanks.
Well, I hope we are all in our ventral vagal and in a nice flow, curious, open-hearted, you know, feeling more organized and even capable of practicing a lot of what Waveney taught us, right? So on behalf of all of the participants and the Franciscan Institute, the sisters, the staff, I really want to thank Waveney for a brilliant presentation. Brilliant because she took what could have been very complicated science and made it very friendly, understandable for everyone. And apart from giving us real state-of-the-art knowledge, she gave us a lot of exercises, practical things that we can do to begin to help ourselves. And she did it at a pace where we could begin to internalize. It was not fast. and yet she did it in very good time. So Waveney, congratulations. I mean, I had no doubt that this was going to be superb, and it was.
You.
And from the questions, you know that you brought the audience, the participants, to a good level of understanding, because I was listening to the questions and seeing where they were coming from. And they were definitely questions that were informed by the information that you gave. And that's one way to evaluate a very good presentation. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And what could I say but blessings, blessings. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Karen, for being there.
Yes.
And doing all of that for us, and for the Franciscan staff, and Lisa and Amy, who has been here. And it's not as easy to be recording, doing this and doing that. And, you know, so Karen, you played a significant role also by taking on the questions. So great. Nice teamwork, guys. Nice teamwork.
Yes.
We have a request here for your contact information, Waveney. So is it okay if I put your office number in the chat?
Yes, it's fine, Karen.
Okay. So it's in the chat, people. All right, so I want to add my voice. When the recording is up, I think the chat will also be accessible to everyone. So if you haven't got the contact information here, or you don't get it in time, it will be available in the recording of the presentation, which is the link, which is on the link in the chat. There is a link there in the chat to get to the YouTube channel. So on behalf of the Franciscan Institute, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. And we want everybody to stay safe, be healthy, practice your breathing, and have a very good night. This is our final in this series for this year, because Christmas is coming up, but we will be back next year. We will have more offerings online. Thank you all, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
So, all right. So, Sister Julie, will you?
Yes.